The research facility on 442B hummed with activity as Doctor adjusted her translation matrix for the thousandth time that week. The device, no bigger than a smartphone, represented 3 years of her life's work and humanity's first real attempt at meaningful communication with the species. Across the sterile white laboratory, her alien counterpart sat with an almost childlike curiosity that seemed to contradict everything the initial contact reports had suggested about her species. Or simply, as she preferred the humans call her, was unlike any alien had imagined during her years studying xenobiology. Standing barely 5 feet tall, with iridescent skin that shifted between deep purples and soft blues depending on her emotional state, she possessed large, expressive eyes that seemed to contain entire galaxies. Her movements were graceful, almost dance-like, and she had an unsettling habit of tilting her head whenever humans spoke, as if trying to decode not just their words but their very essence. They had arrived 6 months ago, their massive ships appearing in Earth's solar system without warning or fanfare. Unlike the dramatic invasions depicted in countless science fiction films, their arrival was surprisingly peaceful. They had simply transmitted mathematical sequences until Earth's scientists responded, then gradually established a basic communication protocol. The aliens claimed to be explorers, researchers much like humanity's own scientists, traveling the galaxy to study different civilizations and their development patterns. Remembered the day she first met. The alien had been assigned to work with Earth's linguistic team, supposedly to facilitate better communication between their species. But from their first interaction, sensed something different about this particular. While other members of species maintained a professional distance, speaking in measured tones about scientific protocols and cultural exchange procedures, seemed genuinely fascinated by the smallest details of human behavior. "Friend," said, her voice carrying the musical quality typical of her species but with an undertone of excitement that had become increasingly familiar, "I have been observing your people for many cycles now, and there is something I must understand. When humans touch each other in certain ways, your biosignatures change dramatically. Your heart rates increase, your skin temperature rises, and you release specific chemical compounds. Yet this behavior seems to serve no obvious survival or reproductive function in many cases." Nearly choked on her coffee. After months of discussing linguistic structures, mathematical concepts, and basic cultural practices, this was certainly not the direction she had expected their conversation to take. She glanced around the laboratory, grateful that they were alone during this late evening session. The fluorescent lights cast long shadows across the room, and the gentle hum of the environmental systems seemed louder than usual. "I'm not sure I understand exactly what you're referring to," replied carefully, though she had a sinking feeling she knew precisely what the alien meant. Skin shifted to a brighter blue, indicating increased curiosity according to the emotional color charts the research team had compiled. "I have observed humans engaging in prolonged physical contact. Your species seems to derive pleasure from touching lips together, caressing each other's skin, and engaging in close bodily proximity for extended periods. Yet I have also observed that many humans who engage in these behaviors are not attempting to create offspring." Felt her cheeks burning red, and she noticed immediate fascination with this physiological response. The alien leaned forward, studying's face with scientific intensity that somehow made the situation even more uncomfortable. "There it is again," said with obvious excitement. "Your facial coloration has changed and your breathing pattern has altered. Are you experiencing distress? Did my inquiry cause negative emotional responses?" "No, it's not distress exactly," said, struggling to maintain her composure. "It's just that the topic you're asking about is considered quite personal in human culture. These behaviors you've observed, they're related to what we call romantic or intimate relationships." His head tilted even further and could see the gears turning in the alien's remarkably expressive mind. "Romantic. This word does not translate properly through our communication matrix. Your language suggests this concept involves both emotional attachment and physical pleasure, but the connections between these elements remain unclear to me." Realized she was venturing into completely uncharted territory. The cultural exchange protocols had covered everything from dietary preferences to religious beliefs, but somehow the topic of human sexuality and romantic relationships had been diplomatically avoided by both species. Now she found herself in the position of having to explain one of humanity's most complex and personal aspects to a genuinely curious alien scientist. When humans form deep emotional connections with each other, began slowly, they often express those feelings through physical intimacy. It's not just about reproduction, though that can be part of it. It's about sharing pleasure, showing affection, and creating a unique bond with another person. Skin had shifted to a fascinating pattern of swirling purples and golds, colors had never seen before. The alien was clearly processing this information in ways that went beyond simple intellectual understanding. So this behavior serves to strengthen social bonds between individuals, said thoughtfully. But I have observed that humans also engage in similar physical interactions with individuals they have only recently met, and sometimes with multiple partners over short time periods. This suggests the bonding function may not be the primary purpose. Found herself simultaneously impressed by his observational skills and by the implications of what the alien had been watching. "You've been studying humans quite extensively," she said, trying to keep her voice neutral. "Of course," replied matter-of-factly. "My research focus is on emotional and social behaviors in developing civilizations. Your species exhibits remarkably complex relationship patterns compared to most others I have studied. The diversity of your romantic and sexual behaviors is truly fascinating from an anthropological perspective." The casual way discussed such intimate aspects of human behavior made realize just how different their species' approaches to personal privacy must be. She wondered if had similar concepts of intimacy, or if they viewed all behaviors as equally valid subjects for scientific study. "What about your own species?" asked, her scientific curiosity overcoming her embarrassment. "Do have comparable behaviors?" His coloration shifted again, this time to deeper blues with hints of silver. "Our species experiences bonding and reproduction quite differently. We form what you might call mental connections, sharing thoughts and emotions directly through bioelectrical fields. Physical contact serves different purposes for us, primarily related to information exchange and energy sharing." Leaned forward despite herself. This was exactly the kind of cultural exchange information that could revolutionize humanity's understanding of alien consciousness and social structures. "So you don't experience physical pleasure the way humans do?" "I did not say that," replied with what was beginning to recognize as the alien equivalent of a mischievous smile. "I said our experiences are different. The concept of physical pleasure exists for my species, but it is more closely tied to mental and emotional stimulation than your purely physical responses." The conversation was moving into territory that knew was far beyond the scope of their official cultural exchange mandate. Yet she found herself genuinely fascinated by the opportunity to understand how another intelligent species approached such fundamental aspects of existence. Moreover, his obvious curiosity about human behavior was infectious, and realized she was enjoying this unconventional discussion more than she had enjoyed any of their previous, more formal exchanges. "I have a proposition for you, friend," said, her skin now displaying a complex pattern of colors that seemed to shift like aurora. "I would very much like to understand these human behaviors more completely, not simply through observation, but through direct experience and explanation. Would you be willing to help me learn about human intimacy and romantic connection?" His mind raced through a dozen different interpretations of what might be suggesting. The implications ranged from simple cultural education to something far more complex and potentially problematic. Yet looking at the alien's genuinely curious expression and remembering their months of growing friendship, found herself considering possibilities she would never have imagined when she first signed up for the research project. "What exactly are you proposing?" asked carefully. "I would like you to teach me," said simply. "Show me how these human bonding behaviors work, explain the emotions and sensations involved, help me understand what makes these experiences meaningful for your species. I believe this knowledge would be invaluable for my research and for improving understanding between our peoples." Stared at the alien for a long moment, processing the magnitude of what was being suggested. This conversation had already gone far beyond anything covered in the contact protocols, and its request would take them into completely uncharted territory. Yet she couldn't deny her own curiosity about the possibilities, both scientific and personal. "This would be highly irregular," said slowly. "I'm not sure our respective governments would approve of such an exchange." His coloration shifted to what had learned indicated amusement. "Then perhaps this should remain between us, as you humans say. a private research project conducted for the advancement of understanding. The way pronounced the word private sent an unexpected shiver through. She realized that somewhere in the course of their months of working together, her feelings toward the alien had evolved beyond simple professional collaboration. There was something about genuine curiosity, her childlike wonder at human behavior, and her obvious intelligence that found deeply attractive in ways she was only beginning to acknowledge. If we were to pursue this, said carefully, it would need to be approached scientifically. Systematic exploration of human romantic and intimate behaviors with clear boundaries and mutual consent for each step. His entire body seemed to light up with excitement, her skin displaying the most brilliant array of colors had ever seen. Yes, exactly. A proper research methodology with careful documentation of experiences and responses. This is precisely the kind of thorough investigation that such an important topic deserves. Found herself smiling despite her nervousness. When you put it like that, it almost sounds like a legitimate scientific endeavor. Because it is, said with complete seriousness. The study of intimate bonding behaviors across species could provide crucial insights for future relationships. We would be pioneers in a completely new field of research. The rationalization was appealing, though suspected their motivations were becoming more complex than pure scientific inquiry. Looking at its eager expression and feeling her own growing curiosity about the possibilities, realized she was seriously considering embarking on what might be the most unusual research project in human history. We would need to establish clear parameters, said, her scientific training asserting itself even as her heart rate increased. Consent protocols, safety measures, documentation methods, and boundaries for each phase of the research. Agreed completely, replied immediately. I would also want to share my species' approaches to intimacy and bonding so that the exchange of knowledge flows in both directions. This research could benefit both our people's understanding of relationship dynamics. Realized that they were actually discussing the framework for an unprecedented cross-species intimate relationship, disguised as scientific research, but motivated by genuine curiosity and growing mutual attraction. The thought was both terrifying and exhilarating. There's something I should tell you, said, deciding that complete honesty was essential if they were going to pursue this path. My interest in this research isn't purely academic. I've developed feelings for you that go beyond professional collaboration. His coloration shifted to warm golds and deep purples. I had hoped this might be the case. While my species experiences attraction differently than yours, I have found myself drawn to your mind, your curiosity, and your emotional openness in ways that I have never experienced with members of my own species. The admission hung in the air between them, transforming their conversation from theoretical discussion to personal confession. Felt a mixture of relief and anticipation, realizing that they had both been dancing around these feelings for weeks. So where do we begin? Asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Moved closer, her alien grace more apparent than ever in the laboratory's soft lighting. Perhaps we start with something your species considers fundamental. You could show me how humans express affection through touch, and I could share how my people create emotional connections through mental bonding. Extended her hand slowly and reached out to meet it. The moment their skin made contact, felt a surprising warmth and a subtle tingling sensation that seemed to spread up her arm. Skin was softer than she had expected, with a texture that was simultaneously familiar and completely alien. Interesting, murmured, her colors shifting to deeper blues and purples. Your bioelectrical field is quite active. I can sense elevated neural activity and increased cardiovascular function. Can you actually feel what I'm feeling? Asked, fascinated by the possibility of such direct emotional connection. Not exactly as you experience it, but I can detect the physiological changes and energy patterns associated with your emotional states. It is like hearing the melody of your feelings without understanding the words. Found the description surprisingly poetic for an alien scientist. She began to understand that this research would offer insights not just into human sexuality, but into completely different ways of experiencing intimacy and connection. What happens next? Asked, still holding his hand and marveling at the strange sensations the contact produced. That depends on what you are willing to explore, replied, her voice carrying new undertones that found compelling. But I suggest we proceed slowly, with careful attention to each other's responses and boundaries. This is uncharted territory for both our species. Nodded, realizing she was about to embark on a journey that would challenge everything she thought she knew about relationships, intimacy, and the possibilities for connection between radically different forms of life. The research facility around them suddenly seemed like the most romantic setting in the galaxy. 3 weeks had passed since and began their unconventional research project, and the results had exceeded both their expectations. What started as scientific curiosity had evolved into something neither species had protocols for addressing. Their evening sessions in the laboratory had become the highlight of days, and she found herself counting the hours until their next meeting. Tonight felt different, though. Had been unusually quiet during their regular daytime linguistics work, her skin displaying muted colors that had learned to associate with deep contemplation. When they finally found themselves alone in the laboratory after the other researchers had left for the day, his first words confirmed suspicions that something significant was on her mind. "Friend, I have been contacted by my superiors," announced, her coloration shifting to worried grays and blues. "They are requesting detailed reports on my research progress with human behavioral patterns. They seem particularly interested in my observations about human bonding and relationship structures." Felt a chill run down her spine. Over the past weeks, they had been careful to keep their research private, documenting their experiences only in personal journals that remained far from official channels. The thought of their intimate explorations becoming subject to bureaucratic review was deeply unsettling. "What have you told them?" asked, trying to keep her voice steady. "Only general observations about human emotional complexity and social bonding patterns," replied, moving closer to in a gesture that had become natural between them. "But they are beginning to ask more specific questions. My research director, Tar, seems particularly curious about the physical aspects of human relationships." Processed this information while studying worried expression. During their weeks together, she had learned to read the aliens' emotional states with surprising accuracy. Right now, was clearly conflicted between her scientific obligations and her desire to protect their private research. "There's something else," continued, her skin now displaying the rapid color shifts that indicated high anxiety. "My people have been monitoring all official human interactions, and they have noticed that our communication sessions often extend well beyond standard protocols. They want to understand why I am spending so much time with a single human researcher." The implications hit immediately. If superiors decided to investigate their activities more closely, it would not take long to discover that their research had ventured far beyond approved cultural exchange topics. The potential consequences for both their careers and the broader diplomatic relationship between their species could be severe. "Maybe we should consider ending our private research," said reluctantly, though every part of her rebelled against the suggestion. "We've already learned so much and documented enough observations to contribute to understanding." His reaction was immediate and intense. Her skin flashed brilliant reds and oranges, colors had learned indicated strong emotional responses. "No," said firmly. "I cannot accept that solution. What we have discovered together is too important to abandon because of bureaucratic concerns." Was surprised by the vehemence of response. Over their weeks together, she had seen the alien display curiosity, amusement, wonder, and even what seemed like affection, but never such passionate determination. "What are you suggesting?" asked, though she suspected she already knew where his thoughts were heading. "I propose that we accelerate our research timeline," said, her coloration settling into determined purples and golds. "Instead of the gradual exploration we have been conducting, we should attempt to document the complete range of human intimate behaviors before my superiors require detailed reports." Stared at her alien colleague, processing the implications of what was being suggested. They had indeed been proceeding cautiously, exploring basic physical affection, emotional bonding exercises, and increasingly intimate conversations about human relationships, but seemed to be proposing that they move directly to exploring the full spectrum of human sexual behavior. "That would mean," began, then found herself unable to complete the sentence. "Yes," replied simply. "I am suggesting that we explore the ultimate expressions of human physical intimacy, for scientific purposes, of course, but also because I have developed what I believe you would call romantic feelings for you, and I suspect you may have similar feelings for me." The direct admission hung between them, transforming their conversation from professional discussion to personal declaration. Realized that her own feelings had indeed evolved far beyond scientific curiosity. Somewhere during their weeks of intimate conversations and gentle physical exploration, she had fallen for an alien in ways she never thought possible. The risks would be enormous, said, though her voice lacked conviction. If anyone discovered that we had engaged in actual sexual relations, it could destroy the entire diplomatic mission. Only if they discovered it, replied with a sly expression that found surprisingly human-like. But we have already proven quite capable of conducting private research without detection, and consider the scientific value of such documentation. We would be the first individuals to explore cross-species physical intimacy. The knowledge gained could be invaluable for future relationships. Found herself torn between practical concerns and overwhelming curiosity about the possibilities was suggesting. The scientist in her was fascinated by the opportunity to explore completely uncharted territory in human-alien relations. The woman in her was increasingly attracted to this remarkable being who had shown such genuine interest in understanding humanity's most personal behaviors. How would it even work? Asked, surprising herself by seriously considering the proposal. Our physiologies are completely different. Skin shifted to warm, inviting colors that made heart race. That is precisely what we would need to discover through careful experimentation. My research into human anatomy suggests that there are numerous approaches we could explore, and I have some ideas about how my species' unique capabilities might create entirely new forms of intimate connection. The way said unique capabilities sparked curiosity despite her nervousness. Over their weeks together, she had learned that possessed several abilities that humans lacked, including limited telepathic communication, precise control over their bioelectrical fields, and remarkable sensitivity to emotional energy. What kind of capabilities? Asked, moving closer to despite her uncertainty. Would you like me to show you? Asked, extending her hand toward with an expression of gentle invitation. Hesitated for only a moment before taking's hand. The moment their skin made contact, she felt the now familiar warmth and tingling sensation, but this time it was stronger, more focused. Then something extraordinary happened. Instead of just feeling the physical sensations of touch, began to experience echoes of some motions. She could sense the alien's genuine affection for her, the excitement about their research, and underneath it all, a deep longing that mirrored her own feelings. It was as if was sharing her emotional state directly, creating a connection more intimate than anything had ever experienced. This is incredible, whispered, marveling at the sensation of experiencing another being's feelings so directly. Is this how your species normally connects? This is a more intense version of our typical bonding behavior, admitted, her skin glowing with soft blues and purples. Normally, we maintain some emotional barriers even during intimate connections, but with you, I find myself wanting to share everything. Realized that they had already crossed into territory far beyond their original research parameters. The emotional connection she was experiencing was more profound than many physical relationships she had had with humans. The possibility of combining this mental intimacy with physical exploration was both thrilling and terrifying. If we do this, said slowly, if we really explore the full possibilities of physical intimacy between our species, it can't just be for research. It would have to be real, based on genuine feelings and mutual desire. I would have it no other way, replied, intensifying their emotional connection until could feel the depth of the alien's affection like a warm current flowing between them. My feelings for you have grown far beyond scientific curiosity. I believe you humans would say that I have fallen in love with you. Hearing those words, even filtered through the translation matrix, sent shockwaves through some emotional landscape. The idea that this remarkable alien being had developed such deep feelings for her seemed almost too wonderful to believe. I love you too, replied, admitting to herself, and to what she had been feeling for weeks. I never thought I could feel this way about someone so different from humanity, but you've shown me that connection transcends species boundaries. The emotional resonance between them intensified, creating a feedback loop of shared affection and desire that left feeling lightheaded with possibility. She realized that they were about to embark on something unprecedented in the history of both their species. How do we begin? Asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Slowly, replied, with complete attention to each other's responses and absolute respect for boundaries. We will be pioneers in the truest sense, exploring not just physical compatibility but the emotional and psychological dimensions of love. Nodded, understanding that they were about to step into completely uncharted territory. The research facility around them suddenly seemed transformed into a sacred space where two different forms of life would attempt to bridge the gap between species through the most intimate form of connection possible. As began to share more of her emotional energy, felt her own barriers dissolving, replaced by a sense of openness and vulnerability that was both frightening and exhilarating. Whatever happened next would change both their lives forever, and possibly alter the course of human relations in ways neither of their governments could imagine. "Before we proceed," said, her voice taking on the formal tones she used for important announcements, "I want you to know that regardless of what we discover through this exploration, my feelings for you are genuine and lasting. This is not mere scientific curiosity or temporary fascination. You have become precious to me in ways I am still learning to understand." Felt tears forming in her eyes at the sincerity and depth of declaration. Looking at this incredible being who had traveled across the galaxy only to find herself falling in love with a human scientist, realized that she was experiencing something miraculous. "You've become precious to me too," replied, reaching out to caress face gently. "Whatever we discover together, I want you to know that you've already taught me things about love and connection that I never knew were possible." As they moved closer together, marveled at how natural it felt to be intimate with someone whose species had evolved on a completely different world. Love, it seemed, truly was universal, even if its expressions varied dramatically across the cosmos. The laboratory's soft lighting cast gentle shadows as two beings from different worlds prepared to explore the ultimate expression of affection, driven by genuine love and scientific curiosity in equal measure. Whatever protocols they might be violating, whatever risks they might be taking, knew that this moment represented something beautiful and historic in the relationship between their peoples. The future of human-alien relations might well depend on what they discovered together in the coming hours. But for now, all that mattered was the warmth of touch and the extraordinary connection they had created across the vast distances of space and evolutionary time. 6 months later, the diplomatic crisis that and had feared became reality, but not in the way either of them had anticipated. Rather than discovering their secret relationship through surveillance or investigation, both governments learned about it when made an unprecedented announcement during a formal diplomatic gathering between species representatives. Stood in the main conference hall of the orbital station that served as neutral ground for human negotiations, watching in amazement as her lover addressed a room full of diplomats, scientists, and military officials from both species. Skin displayed the confident golds and purples had learned to associate with determination and joy, even as the assembled officials murmured in confusion and concern. "Honored representatives," continued, her voice carrying clearly through the translation systems, "I stand before you today to report on a research project that has yielded discoveries far more significant than any of us anticipated when the cultural exchange program began." His heart pounded as she realized what was about to reveal. They had discussed this moment for weeks, debating whether they should continue hiding their relationship or find a way to bring their discoveries into the official diplomatic process. Had ultimately convinced that their research was too important to remain secret, and that their relationship had implications that went far beyond their personal feelings. "Over the past several months," announced, "I have been conducting intensive research into human bonding and relationship behaviors with Dr. This research has progressed through all levels of intimacy, culminating in the establishment of a romantic and physical relationship that represents the first successful cross-species intimate bond in recorded history." The reaction in the room was immediate and dramatic. Human officials began talking urgently among themselves, while representatives displayed rapid color changes that indicated shock and confusion. Noticed several military personnel reaching for communication devices, presumably to report this development to their superiors. General Harrison, the senior human representative, stood up with an expression of barely controlled anger. "Doctor, is this accurate? Have you been conducting unauthorized intimate relations with an alien representative?" Felt every eye in the room turned toward her. This was the moment she had prepared for, the moment when they would either be as rogue scientists who had violated every protocol, or recognized as pioneers who had made one of the most significant discoveries in human history. "Yes, sir," replied, stepping forward to stand beside. "But before you judge our actions, I ask that you listen to what we've learned through this research. Our findings could fundamentally change how both our species understand relationships, consciousness, and the possibilities for cooperation between different forms of intelligent life." Tar's research director displayed the deep reds and blacks that indicated severe displeasure among. "You were specifically instructed to maintain professional boundaries in your research. This violation of protocol could destroy the trust our species have worked to establish." "With respect, honored director," replied calmly, "our research has actually strengthened the foundation for trust between our species. We have discovered that despite our physiological and cultural differences, humans are capable of forming emotional and physical bonds that transcend species boundaries. This suggests possibilities for cooperation and understanding that our original protocols never anticipated." Dr. Sarah, the chief for the human delegation, leaned forward with obvious scientific interest despite the diplomatic tension in the room. "What exactly have you discovered? What are the practical implications of your research?" And exchanged a look and felt the subtle emotional resonance that had become natural between them. Even in this stressful situation, the connection they had developed provided comfort and strength. "We've discovered that love is truly universal," began, her voice growing stronger as she spoke about their findings. "Despite evolving on different worlds under completely different conditions, our species share fundamental emotional and psychological drives that make meaningful relationships possible. More importantly, we've learned that these relationships can be mutually beneficial in ways that go far beyond simple cultural exchange." Nodded, her skin shifting to the teaching colors had seen her use during scientific presentations. "Through our intimate bonding, we have developed new forms of communication that combine human emotional expression with mental sharing. This hybrid communication method allows for understanding and cooperation at levels neither species can achieve independently." "Are you suggesting," General Harrison asked with obvious skepticism, "that romantic relationships between humans and aliens could serve some kind of diplomatic purpose?" "Not just diplomatic," replied, feeling more confident as she explained their discoveries. "Scientific, technological, and philosophical. When two beings from different species form a deep emotional bond, they gain insights into each other's ways of thinking that traditional communication methods cannot provide. And I have been able to solve research problems together that neither of us could have approached alone." To demonstrate their point, moved closer to and established the mental connection that had become second nature to them. Immediately, felt the flow of shared consciousness that allowed them to think together rather than merely communicating thoughts between separate minds. "This connection allows us to combine human intuition and creativity with logical analysis and pattern recognition," explained, even as she continued to share mental space with. "We can literally think with two different types of consciousness simultaneously." Doctor was clearly fascinated despite the political implications. "Can you demonstrate this? Give us an example of what this combined thinking can accomplish." And looked at each other and could feel some amusement through their link. They had anticipated this request and prepared a demonstration that would be impossible to dismiss as coincidence or deception. "Doctor said, please present us with a complex mathematical or logical problem, something that would typically require significant time for either species to solve independently." Doctor thought for a moment, then smiled. "Very well. Calculate the optimal trajectory for a spacecraft traveling from Earth to the home system, accounting for gravitational influences from all major bodies in both systems, varying solar wind conditions, and the need to minimize fuel consumption while maximizing passenger safety." The problem was indeed complex, requiring integration of physics, mathematics, and engineering considerations that would normally take teams of specialists weeks to solve properly. Felt's mind engaged with the mathematical aspects of the problem while her own consciousness focused on the practical engineering constraints and safety considerations. Working together through their mental link, they began processing the problem from multiple angles simultaneously, provided intuitive insights about human engineering preferences and safety priorities, while contributed precise calculations and logical analysis of the mathematical relationships involved. Most remarkably, they found themselves generating solutions that incorporated approaches neither species had considered independently. "Trajectory established," they said in unison, their voices synchronizing in a way that sent chills through the assembled officials. "Optimal path involves 3 gravitational assist maneuvers, total travel time of 437 standard days, fuel consumption reduced by 37% compared to current flight plans, with enhanced passenger safety through distributed acceleration phases." The room fell silent as Doctor quickly their calculations using the station's computer systems. After several minutes, she looked up with an expression of amazement. "These calculations are not only correct, but they represent improvements over our current best trajectory plans," she announced. "More importantly, the approach they've used combines mathematical techniques from both our species in ways that our separate research teams never considered." The implications of the demonstration began to sink in among the assembled officials. Here was concrete proof that intimate cooperation between humans and could yield practical benefits that went far beyond cultural understanding. Ambassador Williams, the senior human diplomat, spoke up with obvious concern. "Even if we accept that such relationships can be beneficial, the social and political implications are staggering. How could we possibly integrate such partnerships into our existing diplomatic and cultural frameworks?" "The same way your species has always adapted to new discoveries," replied with growing confidence. "Through careful study, gradual implementation, and recognition that expanding our understanding of relationship possibilities makes us stronger, not weaker." Skin shifted to warm, hopeful colors as she addressed the delegation. "Our research suggests that such partnerships would be entirely voluntary and based on genuine compatibility between individuals. We are not proposing mandatory integration, but rather expanding the options available for those who choose to explore deeper cooperation between our species." Tar displayed the thoughtful blues and silvers had learned indicated careful consideration among. "What you are describing would require significant changes to our understanding of appropriate relationships. The social implications alone would require extensive study." "Which is exactly why our research should continue," argued. "And I have only begun to explore the possibilities. With proper support and official recognition, we could develop protocols and guidelines that would allow others to benefit from similar partnerships while maintaining appropriate safeguards." General Harrison remained skeptical. "And what about the personal aspects? Are you asking us to officially sanction romantic relationships between humans and aliens?" Felt some emotional support through their connection as she prepared to address what she knew was the heart of the controversy. "Sir, we're asking you to recognize that love and genuine partnership can exist between beings from different species, and that such relationships can serve the greater good of both our peoples. And I didn't set out to fall in love, but we did, and that love has led to discoveries that could benefit everyone." "Furthermore," added, her voice taking on the formal tones she used for important announcements, "and I wish to formalize our relationship according to both human and customs. We are requesting official recognition as bonded partners, which would establish a legal framework for future couples." The request sent another wave of shocked murmurs through the room. Realized they were asking both governments to not only accept their relationship, but to create entirely new legal and social categories to accommodate it. Doctor leaned back in her chair with an expression of wonder. "You're talking about marriage." "We're talking about expanding the definition of family and partnership to include the full diversity of intelligent life," replied. "And we're offering to serve as a test case for how such relationships can work in practice." Ambassador Williams exchanged glances with his fellow human officials before speaking. "This is far beyond anything our governments are prepared to address immediately. Such decisions would require extensive consultation, legal review, and probably approval from the highest levels of both our governments." "We understand that," said calmly. "But we also know that every significant advancement in cooperation has required individuals willing to take the first steps into uncharted territory, and I are volunteering to be those pioneers." Felt a surge of love and admiration for courage in addressing the assembled officials. Here was a being who had traveled across the galaxy, fallen in love with a human, and was now willing to risk everything to advance the cause of understanding. "In the meantime," added, We propose continuing our research under official supervision, documenting our discoveries, and developing recommendations for how similar partnerships might be structured in the future. Our relationship can serve as a living laboratory for cooperation. The room buzzed with conversation as officials from both species began discussing the implications of what they had witnessed. Could see that opinions were divided, with some clearly intrigued by the possibilities, while others remained concerned about the precedent being set. Finally, Ambassador Williams called for order. Doctor, researcher, your presentation has given us much to consider. While we cannot provide immediate answers to your requests, I believe I speak for all of us when I say that your research has opened possibilities none of us had anticipated. The question now, Tar added, is whether our species are ready to embrace such profound changes to our understanding of relationships and cooperation. Looked around the room at the assembled representatives of two worlds, seeing the mixture of curiosity, concern, and wonder in their faces. Whatever decisions they ultimately made, she knew that she had already changed the course of human-alien relations forever. The future of cooperation may well depend on our willingness to explore new forms of partnership and understanding, said in closing. And I offer ourselves as proof that love can bridge any gap, even the vast distances between worlds. We hope our governments will have the wisdom to see the possibilities rather than just the risks. As the formal session ended and officials began filing out to make their reports and recommendations, Felt's hand slip into hers. Through their mental connection, she sensed the aliens' mixture of hope and determination, along with an underlying confidence that they had done the right thing. Whatever happens next, said softly, we have shown both our peoples that the universe is larger and more wonderful than they imagined. That alone makes everything worthwhile. Squeezed's hand, marveling at how natural it felt to be in love with a being from another world. Looking out at the stars visible through the station's windows, she realized that they had indeed expanded the definition of what was possible between species, and that their love story was just the beginning of a much larger adventure for both humanity and the future remained uncertain, but it was a future filled with possibilities that neither species had dreamed of before two curious scientists decided to explore what lay between them.